Hi, everyone. Welcome. My name is Lainey Mays. I'm the Library Marketing Associate at HarperCollins Publishers. I'm here in conversation with Graham Norton. Graham Norton is the award-winning host of The Graham Norton Show. It's one of the most popular programs on BBC America. He's won 8 BAFTAs and has brought so much joy to all, including myself. Hello, Graham.
Hello. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you for being here. How are you doing?
Really good. Yeah, I'm sort of on I'm supposed to be writing, but I'm kind of on a long break. The chat show is on hiatus now, and I'm just about to head off to Ireland for a bit of rest.
Well, much needed, I'm sure. You have a very busy schedule, which I'm going to talk about a little bit in this bio. So, we're very honored to have you speaking today. We're speaking to librarians at the American Library Association Conference, and I'm going to get to your bio. So, for 10 years, Graham presented the Saturday morning slot on BBC Radio 2. In 2021, you began presenting on Saturdays and Sundays on Virgin Radio UK. In 2004, you were named the most powerful person in TV comedy by Radio Times. Since 2009, served as BBC's television commentator for the Eurovision Song Contest. You are a judge on RuPaul's Drag Race UK on the BBC and host of Queens of the Universe on Paramount Plus. And what we're here to talk about today, Graham is the highly acclaimed author of 4 novels, all multiple award winners, and 2 best-selling memoirs. Your memoirs are called So Me and The Life and Loves of a He-Devil. Your debut novel, Holding, was a New York Times bestseller and won the 2016 Irish Independent Popular Fiction Award. And your next 2 novels, A Keeper and Homestretch, won multiple awards. This is your forthcoming novel in the US, Forever Home, that we're here to talk about. It was an instant bestseller in the UK and Ireland. And we have this lovely photo of you signing books. I'm sure. How many pens did you go through?
Honestly, that is the weirdest day. You're there from about 9 in the morning, and I think I was there till about 7 or 7:30 at night. And you go a bit crazy. You just go, because a book signing in a shop is kind of different because you're talking to people and da da da. But when you do those, the warehouse ones where it's just, and you have to stop every now and again and remind yourself of what your name is, how do you spell it, because it just becomes it's such an odd day, and
Yeah.
I sort of hate it, but there's something in me that kind of is like I want to break the record, because that's all anyone talks about. Oh, we had so and so in here last week, and they signed so many thousand, and I'm like, oh, you'll do more than that. Or you get the people who, oh, they were here, they managed to sign 25 or something because they just, yeah. Well, if they've got nice copper plate writing,
Ah.
or the other ones are the influencers. So they just spend all day doing what I just did there. They spend all day doing selfies and da, 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 and never actually signed books. But no, I did it.
Wow, that's impressive. Yeah, your name probably looks very different on the first book as the last. Mine would.
Oh yeah. I mean, some of them you kind of go, I wonder who's going to get that one.
So we're going to talk more about Forever Home. It's already out in the UK and Ireland, but we're going to talk about its release here in the US. And that was just a snapshot of your expansive career. So my first question, how do you have the time to write books, much less 4 novels?
And I, I mean, people do ask me that, and because when you're talking there, I think, oh, I sound really busy. But look at me now. I'm not. I mean, I should be writing a book right now, but I'm chatting to you. Uh, I suppose the books are that I'm not a writer. This is I would describe it as a credible hobby. It's something that I really enjoy doing, and so for me, it's when I block out time to write, I see it on my diary and I go, "Ooh, goody!" So it's not like, "Oh, now I've got to clean the garage out," or "Oh, the gutters need doing." It's no one finds time for those jobs, but actually, I really enjoy the process of being a writer and inhabiting the world of these novels. They're all set in Ireland, and I like spending physical time there, but then when I'm not there, I get to spend it in my imagination. So it's not that I want to find the time. I think that's the difference in anything.
Yeah. Oh, that's interesting. I think it's interesting that you say I'm not a writer, but have these 4
Well,
lovely novels who have won so many
I know,
awards.
but I meet writers, and I think
Hmm.
the difference. between me and a writer. I think a real writer is someone who never wanted to do anything else. Who
Mm,
just, this is what I want to do. I meet people and they're in their 20s or early 30s and they write novels. And I'm
yeah.
thinking, wow, like I think back to who I was then. I would wanted to write a novel, I would never been able to sit alone in a room for that long. I was busy, I was out, I was having fun or making money so I could go have some more fun. I just think the discipline required in a young person to be a writer, that's the difference. I became a writer when I was 50 and wanted to sit down and be in a quiet room.
So that's where it came from. You were like, I'm just gonna sit down. But you wanted to write
I'd always
all
wanted to write, but
okay.
honestly, you never know. You hope you can. And I had written quite a lot when I was young, when I was at school and when I was at university. I kind of wrote. Um, so I knew that I enjoyed it, but I'd never managed to. I'd started a few things, but I'd never
Mm,
managed to write long form. And I think that's you know, when I was writing the first book, I was talking to someone, a writer, and saying, "Oh, I hope people like it. I hope it's good." And they said, "Look, if you finish this book, it is one of the best novels in the world because the vast majority of novels are not finished. They are on memory sticks, they're in laptops, they're in drawers.
mm,
That's the hardest bit, getting past the finishing line. If you do
yeah.
that, that's kind of your job complete.
That's true. We talk a lot about the drawer book is what people call it. It's in my drawer. I never finished it, and so that's good advice. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's
And also the ones I'm really impressed by are those self-starters who decide to write a novel and there's no commission, no one's asked them, no one's shown any interest in it. They keep going because that's why I think most people stop, is because there's a moment in every book that you just can't get past and it just seems impossible and you're sort of up to here in kind of wordy mud and plot molasses and you give up. Whereas if you've got a book deal and someone's going, about that book that we've already given you some money for, that's kind of what gets you through those days. So the people who write books on spec, wow, I'm
yeah.
so impressed by them.
Oh, that's a good point. I love plot molasses. I have to have that somewhere. Well, I have been blown away with your novels, and I think that they are fantastic. They've brought a lot of joy to my life. And so, a little background for those watching, our imprint Harper Via, they acquired your last book, Homestretch. That was the first one we did for HarperCollins. And my first reaction, I think, was, wait, that Graham Norton? Wait, who? Where? Because I'm such a fan of the show. But my second thought after reading what it was about was I have to have that book, and it did not disappoint. It was amazing. And then I was so happy to hear that we had this next one, Forever Home. You have a lot of kindness that you show towards your characters, and they find themselves and they rediscover their family and homeland. And I think they're so nuanced and lovely. And I'm so excited that they're coming to a US audience. I have a great Marianne Keyes quote for this last book. Says his skill at gimlet-eyed observation and nuanced characterization is chef's kiss, but this book is so funny. It's a delight, and I couldn't agree more. And I just can you tell us a little bit about Forever Home?
While I blush, thank you so much for those kind words. That's very, very, very nice of you. Forever Home is it. It is it's a book based in family. I mean, what I find what kicks me off with writing as often is imagining a situation. So, and I remember I was talking to somebody and they were packing up their house and they were going to uh, move. And sorry, there's a barking dog. Douglas, you're not wanted.
They love dogs, so don't
Oh,
worry.
great. He's left the room. But she said, "Oh, this is the second house I've packed up this year. And I just thought, why would that be? And so I imagined an older woman in a relationship with a boyfriend, because lots of, you imagine older people are always settled and they're in long marriages, but actually that's not the way we live our lives anymore. And I imagined an older woman with a boyfriend, and what if he became ill, and what if he had to go into a home, and then you've got to pack up that house. And that's where I started. Yeah, the main character, Carol, she is in this situation, and her partner has a form of dementia, and he eventually has to be put into a home. But of course, the house is his, and she has no standing. They haven't been together. They haven't been cohabiting for that long. And so the children come in and get her out of the house. And then Carol's mother is, I love her as a character. She kind of becomes a moral avenger and wants to right a wrong, but of course makes things so much worse. And it's a book that starts in darkness, and there are some somber moments throughout the book, but equally there's almost kind of slapstick parts to it. I describe it as a dark romp. Uh, it is. I think it's funnier than dark. I think. I hope.
I don't know. I love that. I think that's perfect way to describe it. Humorous, a little dark, and but there's like humanity and vulnerability with these characters. I found myself getting kind of teared up with Carol's story because you feel for her. She's not tied to him, but how do
Yeah.
you,
I
yeah.
mean, I find, and I think maybe this is a weakness in me as a writer, but I even characters, like the adult children
Mhm.
in this book, who in the beginning, when they're sort of evicting Carol, are nominally kind of the villains of the piece, but because when you're writing a novel, you spend so much time with these characters, you have to figure out how they got to this place. You have to figure out why are they behaving like no one is pure evil. As let's hope. So you've got to figure out why are they behaving this way. How did they end up in this place? And I think as the novelist, you've got to understand them. But of course, once you start doing that, then you have some empathy for them, and
Yeah.
so yeah, my books aren't very, if you're looking, there aren't real baddies in my books. Even in Home Stretch there was a man who did a very bad thing, but in the end he is forgiven, and that's sort of the point of the book, that that's that's much that's the only way that story can end. There is no revenge that will satisfy the ending of a story. Forgiveness is kind of a great key to plot.
Right. So everybody's in their own story. So, I think that I'm in the right in any story I tell. So it's nice to be able to see a 360 view.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's what makes, that's why I enjoy fiction, is kind of
Mm,
just inhabiting different worlds and different characters. That's that's the joy of it. Yeah.
yeah. Well, I think that this one's very pacey, and I started off. I feel like I was halfway through. I was like, "This is a very different book than I thought I was getting." There's a sneaky mystery in there, and it was lovely, but it was very pacey. And I'm glad you said they have good endings. They're not all evil, but I feel like they also are not sugar coated. They have embarrassing things and things from their past. And I'm glad you mentioned Moira, Carol's mother, because she's really good at lying, and I found that so funny that she just any lie, she just I'm
Yeah.
gonna do it, and she takes over that situation, which we won't give away. It's very hard to
Yeah.
talk about, but and so you talked a little bit about the idea coming. So you would say that the idea for the book comes before the characters, or do you think it's kind of hand in hand?
No, I think the idea is normally like a situation, what would happen to a person if that happened. So Home Stretch begins with a car crash where, because again, this is something that happens in Ireland all too frequently during the summer months. People are joyriding, or just, they're young, they're overexcited, there's too many people in the car. And I heard about this one boy, and three of his friends had died in this car crash. And I just thought, you're so young. That's like your start of your life. And you are responsible for the death of three of your friends, but also the children of your parents' friends. It's a small community. And I just thought, how does that person go on with their life? How does that play out. So that's where that one started. And then uh, what's I'm sort of in this at the moment because I've just started a fifth novel, and it's that extraordinary thing where before you start typing, none of these people exist, none of these places exist, and then there they are. And it's the beginning of a book is so kind of magical, as it's it's like kind of zombies coming back to life out of the ground or something. These characters become so real in your head for the year or so that you're writing the books. And that's where that's kind of how the so you get the situation, then the characters, and then plot is normally the third thing that comes for me, is kind
Yeah.
of what happens. Because I mean my books are pacey, I think, because I like that in books. I can enjoy a well structured sentence or a lovely pen portrait or a description of the weather, but if there's no plot, I like to know why I am reading this book. I am reading this book to find out what happened to so and so, or how did this happen. Da, da, da. If it's just if it's all just lovely writing, I can admire, but I don't really engage.
Yeah, I totally get that. But it is really pacing, and I think thought provoking because there, it made me go back and question things because you're dealing with. We were just talking about other people's stories and how someone else is always telling the story another way. So there's a character in this who is losing his memory and he can't speak up for himself. So you really don't know if
Yeah.
these are truthful or not. And I think book clubs are going to find this really interesting because memory and truth. Do you want to talk about memory in the novel at all?
Yeah, I mean, because people always talk about unreliable narrators and all that sort of stuff, but we're all unreliable narrators. How many times have you bumped into someone you went to school with or used to work with, and oh, remember that time? And either you don't remember that time or you remember it so differently, that like you're looking at them going, were you even there? I don't remember you there. Or was I even there? Or did I? So no one's memory is reliable, I would say. And in this, because memory is a real theme of the book, because you get this man, and he is the only person in the book who actually knows what happened, but he will never be able to tell us. And then we get different versions of one, what happened, but also different versions of him. And that's what I find interesting, where when Carol learns more, she's having to look back on her happy memories and kind of go, oh, wait, is that what's happening? Or, was he controlling me in some way? Was he manipulating me in some way? And she'll never know. She just will never know. Um, but because he had a these children come from a previous marriage, a previous relationship, and it's what went on there, and she's meeting him fresh. And and as a reader you're sort of thinking, well, people are allowed to change. People are allowed to be different, or and have different relationships and be changed by the relationship or by the person. Those things do happen. So, and I never really spell it out, which might make some people throw the book across the room, but it's never really spelt out.
I don't mind it. I don't mind it. I think it's yeah. I think it's definitely done because it's something for people to discuss. The conversation keeps going, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And also I think what's I think in terms of book clubs and stuff, that idea of kind of relationships later on in life, I think people those are interesting because they are so different to first marriages. Um, and the relationship of adult kids with their parents, and all of that, and of course caring. uh, for a loved one, that I think is so, that impacts so many people's lives. I mean, my dad had Parkinson's, and my mother looked after him at home for as long as possible, but then he ended up in a home, and that's no one's dream. That's nobody want, that was never in the plan. when you know and I remember when he died, I was so aware of my mother as, once being a young woman who, they were in love, that, that, and, when they walked down that aisle, they didn't think they were walking into this. And yet there you are. And I think a lot of people end up in those kind of uh, grim situations. And and I think talking about those things and recognizing, though, because I think the isolation of being in those situations must be just brutal. So being able to talk about them would be great.
Yeah. Oh, well, I can't imagine the what goes into that, and takes strong people.
Yeah.
Um,
There are the weird people who don't do it. I remember when I worked in restaurants, someone, his parents, the father had been diagnosed with cancer, and his mother left him. Just went, I didn't sign up for this. And you're thinking, pretty sure you did. I'm pretty sure there was a specific vow about this, the
yeah, yeah.
sickness and health one. Um, but just when I didn't sign up for this and left. And I secretly kind of admire those people. I'm like, wow, you really do not care. Most of us have a kind of a wanting to be liked gene, but it's kind of amazing that she just went,
Yeah.
no, not for me.
And to say that publicly, like not even use
Yeah,
another excuse.
yeah.
Wow. Yeah, and I think you touched a little bit on kids and mothers, but I really, and that's a big theme in this, or mother relationships
Yeah.
specifically. But I think what was really interesting is there's a mother figure relationship. So Carol is never their stepmother, but they, I don't know if you want to talk about how they kind of react to each other.
Well, it's it's always difficult. We can talk about Carol when she comes into the house, because she is a teacher, and one of the daughter in the house, it, it kind of claims her, is sort of in love with her in that way that kids get crushes on their teachers. Not in a sexual way at all, but just in a, just you just love them because they're great. They're a really inspiring teacher, and da, da, da. So when Carol then gets involved with her father, that's such a kind of double betrayal. It's a betrayal of the memory of the mother, but it's also a betrayal of her relationship. It's doubly difficult. Um, and again, it takes Carol a while, but she does get there. She does find some understanding of Sally, and I think Sally in the book, I think, is the person who kind of grows the most. She has the biggest journey because her life kind of gets stuck very early on, and it's and again, holding my first novel dealt with this a bit, that, and we all have these people in our lives where people have, horrible, big, bad things happen to them when they're young, in their teens, early 20s. And some people get stuck in that moment. Their life is kind of blighted by it. And some people, in some way, get over it. They move on with their lives, and it's a thing that happened back then, but it's not. And I don't know what that is. If it's just personality type, or I find it really interesting because I've met both sorts of people in my life, and
Mm.
I'm not really sure which one I am. I think I'm probably a get over it,
Yeah,
but
interesting.
thankfully I haven't really been tested.
Well, all the book clubs can now take that as a question too. Are you a
Yeah,
get over it, or are you keep
yeah.
going? I don't know if people who hold on to things would be able to say that they're a hold on. Just I don't know. It's interesting.
No, actually,
Um,
you're right. They probably couldn't say, but you know who they are.
You know who they
Yeah.
are.
Oh, we're talking about this again?
Well, I think that the characters in this book they could just be on their own. The characterization is wonderful, but I think there are these elements. There's a lot packed into this book that to unpack and to enjoy. And then, I don't I know we're here about the book and I don't want to talk about your talk show too much, but I enjoy it and I think it's so unique because you take this celebrity bubble away kind of when you put them all on this couch. They're famous, but they have to react to other people. They always have a drink in hand, so you never know what comes out. But I think that gets to the essence of your books as well. It makes total sense to me because you're looking at really basic needs, home, family, love, belonging, etc. But you can tell this fabulous story, and you're there to kind of guide them along. And so we see these characters for who they are and who they want to be. So that I was just gonna say that makes total sense to me. But I would think spending time with all of these celebrities all the time, you could easily write the big glam book, even a novel, but glam. So why small Irish communities?
It was really deliberate, Lenny. What I did, look, and I apologize to any aspiring writers out there. So, certainly in this country, I'm Graham Norton, man off the television. And so, because of that, I can get a book deal. And I apologize. I know that's not fair. It's not the way the world should be, but there you go. And who am I? Who am I to rock the boat? So I took my book deal. Um, but so that's the good bit about being Graham Norton off the TV. The bad bit is your name is on the cover of the book. And I don't know about you, but one of the things I like about reading is it's such an intimate entertainment. You know, the only thing I can think of where there's no other filter or influence. You're not sitting in a row of people. You're not imagining other people watching this television. You're not hearing a laugh track. There's nothing else. It's just you and those words, and you actually kind of build so much of it in your head. And it's that's it. And what I didn't want was to be present. I didn't want to be reading over people's shoulders. Um, so I did everything I could to help people forget that I'd written this book. So withholding, there are no gay characters. It's set in rural Ireland, which is a world I know really well, but it's not a world that people associate me with. Um, and there's no hint of show business or anything, and that was all deliberate to do that. And also I kind of like, because my world, my other working world is all that stuff. It is in London. It is television studios and, going to movie screenings and talking to actors and movie stars and things. I guess I don't want that to be my other world. I don't want that to be my books because the books are a refuge from that, or they're a relief from that, or a distraction from that. So I guess that was the other reason. And that's always the biggest compliment is when somebody tells you, "I forgot you wrote this." That's the nicest thing you can hear.
Well, that's so interesting. Wow. Okay. And well, they're all Irish stories too, even though, you split your time. And I read the two books and then I went back and read The Life and Loves of the He Devil, your memoir. And at the beginning you talk about your, 50th birthday party and you say life was reflected back to you in the crowd. I saw my life for what it really was, made up my passions, Ireland, which I'd fallen back in love with, and all the people who helped me build my career. And you go on to say New York and all these things, all of those it dings. It's like all of this stuff is in your books. They're a love letter. I see that all come pour through. And but I want to talk about the first part about Ireland and falling back in love with it. I don't know if you could talk about that a little bit.
Well, you know what? I was talking to someone earlier, and we were talking about Ireland, and she used that phrase, falling back in love with, because it's from my book. I use that phrase. And I realized I didn't fall back in love with Ireland. I
Mm.
fell in love with Ireland because I was not in love with Ireland. Growing up there, I wanted out. It was claustrophobic. It was, stultifying. And, I wanted to go to the bright lights. I wanted to go to London. I wanted to go to America. I Ireland was not for me.
Yeah.
And it was really only when uh, my father, as I say, he had Parkinson's when he was ill and he was dying. And then when he died, that was kind of when I started to fall in love with Ireland, because in that moment, so many of the things that I thought kind of I don't know, just held you back or restraints, all that kind of, all those community ties, they seemed kind of like a straitjacket when I was a kid. But of course, when my dad died, you realize, oh no, there's supports. They're like, they're holding it all up. They're holding it all together.
Yeah.
And and that was when it began. And I suppose, it I was, by that stage I was 40, so I was already more mature. I was now successful. I had some money in my pocket, so I was a very different person coming back to Ireland. And also, as I talk about in Home Stretch, the other book, Ireland has changed so much over that time. So it was a kind of a meeting. Ireland changed, and I changed, and now I love it. I absolutely love spending time there. But then, you know, when you're young, you want to run around and see flashing lights and hoot and holler. I guess it probably wasn't great for that. But now that I'm 60, and want to see the leaves changing, it is a much better place for old people fun.
Hmm. Oh, but I love the community aspect because it, that what can hold you back can really help you in those times. So I love that.
Yeah, I really see it in Ireland. Like, and when I like even little things like last year, I got married and we had a wedding party during the summer in Ireland, and it was kind of a 2 day thing. People, we flew people in, and but what was interesting was we didn't say to anyone in the village or the little town, oh, keep this a secret, but they went into lockdown on it. Because there were journalists there sniffing around trying to find out who was at it. Da, 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 da. Nothing. Nobody cracked. No, nobody said anything, and that just I felt I just adored that the people kind of considered us okay, we own them, and
Yeah.
some journalist from Dublin isn't going to get anything, and and that's kind of part of what we're talking about, that idea of
Mm.
community and how kind of how strong those ties can be.
Yeah, they're loyal. That's loyalty right there.
Yeah, no, it was really lovely.
If you ever have to have a secret, you know who to go to. Oh, that's great. And home is a big, coming home is a big theme, and especially the last two books. So I think that that all shines through. So naturally, you read your audiobook, and we have a clip from the new one. This is fresh off the press for us. We just got it in, and librarians are going to be able to get a digital copy early. If they're in
Oh,
the
great.
club, they
Yeah.
get the audiobook a little early before the September on sale. So that will be up soon. But for now, we have a little clip to get you started, and it really sets it up. It's just a minute, the first part of the book, and we're really really excited to have it.
The Back Key of Ballytour was where things used to be. That grey building on the corner of Toomey's Lane had been the Garda Barracks long before it was upgraded to the glass and brick box up beside the hospital. Kyo's hardware shop used to be housed in the big double-fronted stone premises, the name still legible above the large windows smeared with the mysterious milky wash of abandoned shops. Few could remember it, but the tall, thin building with the narrow door had been the town's only bike shop. Now it just seemed to be awaiting its own collapse. Cleary's garage remained open, an apron of oil and grease spreading across the road. But these days, most car owners gravitated towards one of the newer garages, further out on the Cork Road. Peering over the shabby patchwork of roofs along the back quay was a strangely genteel terrace of houses. It looked out of place, like a guest who was hopelessly overdressed for the occasion.
Ooh.
I just want to curl up and listen to the whole thing now.
I I find those so difficult to listen to. Um, I I get why they make me do it, but
I'm sorry.
I wish they'd get someone else to do it. Uh, it's and actually American listeners will probably be okay, but I think
Mm,
Irish listeners they must. Oh, because what
sure.
happens is everyone's from Ireland. Everyone in the book's from Ireland. So when they talk, they all have an Irish accent,
They do.
as as do I. So to differentiate the voices, they have to be from all over Ireland. So like members of the same family will have like a brother who's from Dublin, a sister who's from Northern Ireland. Only Irish people will be able to spot it. Amer- Americans are just like, oh yeah, they're all from Ireland. No, they're from all over Ireland. Yeah, and it's that horror when you're doing the audiobook. You turn the page and you go, oh no, they talk. What do they sound like? Uh, it's challenging, but I kind of there's bits of it I really enjoy, but the dialogue, like, oh, it's terrible.
I mean, I can't imagine, yeah, the scrutiny that people would go through if they know that. I personally don't, so US audience will
All
be
good.
fine. But I think it's important for you to read it though, because I think we know your voice. You're guiding us through. It's very comforting. So, and you do such a wonderful job with it. Do you prefer how's it recording fiction versus recording your memoir? You can't change anything at that point. Is it odd to
You,
record
you
both?
you can't change anything. I suppose the memoir is easier because it's literally my voice. It's I, and when I say I, it really is me. Um, I think, and also the stories very well, and you kind of often there's a joke in the story, or so there's a rhythm to it. I think with fiction, it's finding that kind of narrator's tone where
Mm,
you don't sound bored, but you're not, you don't have too much attitude. It's trying to find a
mm,
kind of, it's trying to find the neutral but engaged tone. And then, as I say, the dialogue is the hardest thing.
mm,
But I do know sometimes I think in every novel so far, there's been a scene that made me cry while I was reading it. And
mm.
I kind of think, oh, I've done an okay job here. It kind of makes me because when you finish a book, you do kind of go, oh God, what have I done? What is this? Uh, and so when you do the audiobook and you know it's the one time where you spend that long reading your own work aloud. It's a very strange experience, but it's the closest to a reader's experience you'll ever get. So those
Mm.
moments when I kind of I do find a scene genuinely moving, I kind of think, oh, this is okay, we're okay.
You feel validated 'cause you're like, okay, that's good. I've
Yeah.
stepped away, but I'm back. That's great. So you're very supportive of authors and their books. You have the Graham Norton Book Club on Audible.
Yeah, yeah.
And somebody asked me recently, instead of what's your favorite book, they asked me what book or books made you a reader. And I think that's such an interesting question. So I don't know if you have a book in your life that you think like, oh, that made me a reader.
I mean, there was those early books when I was a kid, and it was all about plot. So, Enid Blyton wasn't as big in the States as she was here, was she?
I'm not familiar.
Yeah. Oh, so Enid Blyton was a kind of kids
Okay.
writer, kind of young adulty, and there were kind of adventure stories and
Mm,
mysteries and things, and then a bit of Agatha Christie because my mother was a big reader. There were books in our house. My sister was a big reader, so we had books in the house. But I think the book that kind of, I don't know, changed my relationship with books. And in school we had read some classics. We read some Jane Austen, whatever, and I really enjoyed those. I admired those, but uh, we had a substitute teacher, and called Niall McMonigal. And weirdly, he's still a friend. I see him all the time. And he came in and he had that enthusiasm of a young teacher, and he had plastic bags, plastic carrier bags of books, and he
Mm.
just threw them out at us. So it was just kind of total, random raffle, who got what. And I got The Bell Jar by Sylvia Plath.
Mm.
And I must have been 16.
Okay. I was gonna ask how old you were to be
Yeah,
giving you the Belgian.
yeah.
Okay.
I was about 16, and oh, I loved that book. It
Mm.
had just the attitude and the kind of that wry humor and that sort of kind of that world weariness of youth, that kind of thing where everything's stupid. But yeah, I loved it. And it was so funny and then so heartbreaking.
Yeah.
It's such a kind of yin and yang book. But that was the book that I think it changed everything. My relationship with reading really was altered by that book.
Yeah. A little bit dark, but so beautiful. That's a beautiful book. Oh, wow.
And so funny and so relatable. And I think
Mm.
what's amazing is when people can write about what they are
Mm.
with a distance. I
Yeah.
think like Lena Dunham did it, I think, in Girls. Amazing to be someone that age, writing about people that age, but
Mm.
with such perspective on, how
Mm.
silly they're being or whatever, or how gullible they are. Whatever. I just think that's amazing. And Sylvia Plath so did that in The Bell Jar, where she she really was able to stand outside the window and just observe herself and write about it. It's a phenomenal thing.
Yeah. Are you reading anything right now that you're super excited
Oh,
for?
let me big it up. And I shouldn't big it up because I think it's coming out round about the same time as my book. But I just finished Zadie Smith's new book, The
Mm.
Fraud. Have you read that yet?
I haven't, but Zadie is amazing.
This, honestly, and because I know her a little bit, and so she sent the proof, and I read it, and I emailed her back, and I just like, it is a mic drop of a novel. It's just kind of like a,
Mm.
yeah, I wrote that. It's historical fiction. It's her first go at historical fiction, and the tone and the poise of it's just so perfect, and it never falters, and it's based on a couple of true stories, and she kind of intertwines them, and it is yeah, I mean, it's her best book so far, I would say. I really, really loved it. Yeah. So big
Yeah.
that up. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm writing it down as you speak. That was great. I love Mike Drive. I hope she puts that somewhere. She needs that everywhere. Um, well, thank you. We're running out of time. I have one more question, but just thank you so much for talking about this, for your words, and for everything. This has been so lovely.
Oh, well, it's
Um,
been such a pleasure. And before we started recording, I was telling you my sister's a librarian, so big up the libraries. Yeah.
yes. Well, before I end, I actually want to go back to libraries a bit because um, I think it's important to call out that during these times, all these people watching, these librarians are under a real threat. They're keeping books on shelves, they're looking for representation, they're making sure they're fighting the good fight, and it's unfortunately in the US a very big fight. There's the stat from the ALA, the American Library Association, that we're speaking at. It says more than 1,200 challenges were compiled by the ALA in 2022, nearly double the record in 2021, and by far the most since they started keeping data 20 years ago. So that's just an amazing influx that they're dealing with of just book bans.
Yeah.
Everyone's taking books. And so I think I wanted to be sure to mention that in Homestretch, Connor, the main character, who's gay and feels isolated, he leaves for other reasons, but he leaves the country, but he doesn't always feel included until he comes back and he sees some changes.
Yeah.
And it's a great book to keep on the shelves in circulation. So, is there anything you'd like to say to libraries or librarians facing these pressures?
I mean, it's what we don't really have it here yet, but it's coming. If they're rattling cages over there, they'll be rattling them here soon. And what strikes me is just the arrogance of it, to kind of like, I don't want that book in my library. It's not your library. Libraries belong to all of us. And if they're not serving all of us, and if we can't all find ourselves in those libraries, what are they? And and by getting rid of the books, you're not changing anything. You're not changing the world. You've just made the library a bit worse than it was. It's such a I it baffles me that you don't that you have such little understanding of what books can do. You know, books don't make anybody anything. They don't turn anybody anyway. They just let you into worlds. They're keys to other worlds. And it just seems crazy to throw those keys away. And hopefully, I do think, you know, we've been here before. You know, books have been burned. Books were seen as the devil's work. They were incredibly dangerous. All of that. So we recognize this, and we know we will get past this. It's going to get better again. But for librarians, I mean, who became a librarian to be on the on the front line of some sort of weird culture war that no one declared, nobody wanted?
So true.
So I do feel for librarians having to to deal with this sort of stuff. It must be awful. But uh, those people are noisy, but the vast majority of the people maintaining silence in the library, uh, you know, they're so supportive of libraries. My sister, they just built a new library in Bandon, in County Cork, and it's enormous, and it's so much bigger than the old library. And you're thinking, really, is there a demand for that size of a library? It's the busiest library in Ireland, and it just goes to show if you invest in libraries, then communities value them and communities invest in them and communities use them. So it was a real eye opener because, you know, because of the internet and stuff, you worry, oh, are libraries as valuable as they once were? And the answer is yes, they are still vital. And to go back to that Irish thing of community, libraries are such amazing communities in themselves, but also as community hubs. They're just, yeah, I mean, I'm in awe of the work they do. And I love every year in Ireland, you know, they put out the stats of most borrowed books. And I'm so like every year I'm now on that list of the most borrowed books. And I love that people are going into libraries and asking for my books. It's gorgeous.
So when are you gonna think you're a writer? How many things are you gonna get to know?
uh,
Yeah, it's so true. I mean, you're not, like you said, you're not changing the world by taking a book out and making that go away, but you're making the life harder for those people who need those books that go to the library.
yeah, yeah, and so it's people who want to find themselves in books, but also it's people who want to understand the rest of the world, who don't just want to, you know, they don't just wake up, be born, and then stay in that little world for the rest of their lives. You know,
Mm,
there's so much to explore, and books are such a brilliant way to do it. It's mind-boggling. Anyway,
for sure. Well, thank you for those kind words. Like, hopefully that gives some motivation, some uplift. We get messages all the time. They're like, it's discouraging. So thank you.
I just thank you so much for supporting
Yes.
Forever Home. It's so kind of you, and thanks for all your kind words about the other books as well.
Of course, it's been my pleasure. And I want to remind everyone, librarians can read now. E-galleys are available on Edelweiss and NetGalley. It comes out September 19th, 2023 in the US, and it's available in all formats, hardcover, ebook, and audio, as you heard. And this is just, I urge everyone to pick it up. They're heartwarming, they're complicated, they're beautiful. And thank you, Graham, so much.
That's so kind of you. Thank you very much. Take care now. Bye bye.
Bye.